The presentation that I thought would be helpful today, and that I wanted to give some thought to anyway, and maybe other folks are thinking about it, is the future of the technology we need to activate both intent and other signals. So I want to explore a little bit about what is intent versus a signal. Why are we here in the first place? Go a little bit backwards, but quickly come back to current reality, but really explore the sort of evolution of tech and why we're here and what it really looks like in the future. So I've titled this From MQL Machine to Engagement Architect. And what that's supposed to mean is the traveled road that as B2B marketers we have been on since maybe 2014 or so. That's as far back as I've taken this presentation, where we were really the bearer of load volume, right? I think we worked as lead volume department, and at least broadly we did, and we've been asked over the last few years, decade or a little more, to be more of engagement architects. And good engagement requires insights, and insights come in the form of intent data and signals, fairly broad categories that we'll explore a bit more. So I really want to think about the evolution we've had from what was marketing automation and what it looked like and how we used it and how customers reacted to it, even us as customers, and then think about what the future stack looks like. So let's dive in. Not all of my slides are a wall of text, but this one is. This is just my background. When I was a Forrester analyst in 2016, I started to cover predictive marketing analytics. At the time, this looked like 6 Sense, which has evolved a little bit to, of course, CDP and other things, ABM. It looked like Minigo, firms that may or may not still be on your radar, and other firms whose value proposition was this: hey, you guys as B2B marketers have made lead scores primarily from two pieces of information, demographic and behavioral. We're essentially going to give you more data to add to those lead scores. That was the earliest use case of what we now call intent and signals. And what happened? What happened there was, in my opinion, and the hypothesis I'll submit to you today, that we weren't necessarily ready for it. That on many occasions, what I saw was a marketing team evaluating this tech, a sales team that was fairly resistant to it, and then a marketing team that also said, hey, we've got existing campaigns. These things are built. They're workflows in marketing automation. Perhaps they work. When we uncover a lead from an intent system like a 6 Sense, then we're going to put them in those campaigns. And the disconnect became, if someone shows intent, if there's a piece of intent data, how can we really use it so that it supports an outcome that we want, likely a conversion or a buy or an upsell? So it's not so much that having the data was awesome, although early days, having the data was awesome. Great, this person appears to be in market. They're surging in terms of lead score. Isn't that amazing? Let's put them in a campaign. That was largely the solution at that time. But now we know, and we're a little smarter, and we've been asked to architect engagement. And we're thinking about how do we apply and activate insights in a way that they matter for the prospect and that they move folks forward because they add to personalization. And so the question here, the hypothesis is, do we have the engagement strategy now, or can we have it with the tech stack that we have? So we'll proceed. This is if there were folks here might argue with me about whether these years are exactly right, and I submit to you that maybe they are not, but around 2014, I would say we were in an era of lead scoring and marketing automation. So lead score, again, had two primary ingredients: demographic data, how big is your company, does that make sense for my company, where you were geographically, what industry you might be in, etc. Some information about demographics. And then, of course, behavioral. Have you been on my site? Have you been to our webinars? Have you indicated in any way by subscribing to my blog or anything like that? Have you shown an interest? And at that time, of course, how many points do I assign to that interest? And then I think we moved toward 2018. Again, this might look more like 2020 or even 2016, but somewhere in those few years, we adopted a term like predictive analytics, which evolved very swiftly, somewhere between 2016 and 2017, to ABM. And two key things happened to classic lead scoring. Number one, what used to be activity on our own sites. So in classic lead scoring, we would say, if you download a white paper, we give you 5 points. And boy, we hope we get to 100 so that we can pass you over to sales. What happened now with the tools like predictive analytics tools was they were able to say, hey, not only are you able to identify now what sort of topics a prospect has been exploring on your own website and properties that you own, but also on Forbes.com, or name your external site that publishes about things like cloud computing, about things like HR software, about things like CRMs and marketing automation systems. And we'll be able to pull identities, at least account-based identities at that time, and help you understand which accounts are surging. And your lead score will be powered by that. Other things could be powered by it too, but in 2018, marketers heard, great, that is going to strengthen our intent argument. It's going to strengthen our behavioral data piece of lead scoring. And isn't that wonderful? And then, of course, account-based marketing took over the headlines for a period of time here. Even now, that continues to be the case because it is the way that we should go to market and sell in many ways. And the account score emerged. And the account score acted very much like a lead score, only it was to say there is an account surging. Not only is one person from this IP address active on topics like cloud computing, but we've got a number of them. So this whole account is surging. This is great news for you. And at that time, just to turn it back to tech, everything lived in the CRM. So if you're in marketing at that time, not that it's decades ago, but you might hear, I really need things to live in the CRM from your peers in sales. That's where I go. For deals, right, as a salesperson, I might go and read a 10K. I go and follow those individuals on LinkedIn. I will do everything to personalize that relationship once they're in a deal. But again, going back a few years, we weren't really living like that. We were mostly, until before a deal cycle, we weren't necessarily getting that intimate with accounts because it was a ton of manual work. And you did it when it counted, which was generally an opportunity phase. This signals and insights intent stack is purposely left blank for slide 3, because I want to take a step back and talk about 2 reasons for the change. Essentially, one reason for the change is that there's limitations in those classic stacks, what we think of as marketing automation. No offense to the folks who make them, no offense to the Adobes of the world, the Marketos of the world who kind of got us started there. But they do have siloed data. So there's data in there. And if you want to integrate, you do the work of integrations, right? If you want to share that data. And that has complications. Complications we've all faced and perhaps successfully. There's a lack of personalization. There's a few things happening here. One, there's our faith in the data to personalize. I know as a marketer that when I have built outbound communications or nurtures and workflows that are based on a trigger, whatever the case, I'm asking myself, do I trust this data? Is this data that I'm willing to personalize around? Or is it data that's aged and we don't know? Does it possibly make us look foolish? This is the classic, do you have a first name in the database? But bigger, right? Because we started to use more fields and personalize more massively. So we're worried about that from a real-time point of view. But it's also difficult to combine signals, right? That's just a limitation of our traditional tech stack because they live in different spots. And finally, there's inefficiencies in the workflow. We don't necessarily track well the signals that are important to our customers. And I'll get into that in a little bit. The other piece of why we need to evolve it's not that the tech doesn't serve us, it's actually that the tech doesn't serve our customers. And there's a number of reasons why here. And while this slide looks simple, any combination of words on this slide could really be at least a half an hour engagement in itself. The modern marketing mandate is really customer driven. It's not tech driven. It's not driven by the fact that AI now exists and it will come to you in a CRM. It's just driven by 3 core things. at the highest levels. Number one is a significant shift in the balance of power between customers. By the way, a role that we play in our B2B purchasing lives, and vendors, a role that we also play in our B2B marketer lives. And we know this because of the way that we buy and the way that we observe our buyers buy. So, what does it look like? What it looked like many years ago, or even 10 years ago, is that if I wanted to buy something, there was information I wanted that only the company that was going to sell me something really had, or that group of 3 companies that could sell it to me. So, let's just say I was in the market for a learning management system and I was an HR professional. I was really dependent on the educational content that they had on their websites. If I wanted it, I was expected to give my email. If I gave my email or phone number as a required field, my phone was going to ring and the sales process would begin. If I wanted pricing information, I had to make that call. I almost absolutely had to talk to sales. Maybe in some cases I talked to a peer, but really that was generally behind a gate as well. If I wanted a reference, I might go to you as an HR vendor and say, I would like 3 of your references. Also, I would like for them to look kind of like me. Maybe I'm a Series C company, maybe that's important to me. Maybe I want someone in a similar geographic background. Maybe I want a company that doesn't have a CHRO because that's who I am. Either way, you are going to go back to your CRM as that company selling to me and make a decision about what type of references I talk to. All of this power you had. Again, we could do this all day. I'm not going to ask you to do that. What I will ask you to do is just compare that to now. If I'm interested in a customer reference, I'm going straight to G2, Trust Radius, or other peer review sites like that. I might just go on LinkedIn and say, hey, anybody use XYZ vendor? And people will answer me and they'll have a point of view on that experience. If I need pricing, I can do either of those same things. If I even care about how happy your employees are, I have Glassdoor. I just have all the information at my fingertips that you once held behind a gate, that I once held behind a gate. And now I'm just incredibly more powerful. No matter what we do with our tech stack internally, we have lost to this, right? To this powerful machine in our pockets that connect us to everything. So we still have to improve, but we're at a disadvantage already. The next thing is the ratio of how much of the buyer journey took place in person, on the phone versus digitally. Now, it really depends who you ask. I actually was on a session today as a watcher. I just watched a session today, and one of the speakers said 80% of the buyer journey takes place digitally. And I literally rolled my eyes and thought, yes, we know. But I'm saying it to you again because it actually really is an important part of this story. If that entire buying process, it's 80% if you ask one research firm, it's 79% if you ask another, it's 85 another. Doesn't matter where we land, it's clearly mostly digital. Nobody wants to talk to a salesperson before they're ready. And that means that those experiences that are digital, largely owned by marketing, have to be relevant. They have to build trust. They have to be personalized. They have to take into consideration signals that we once didn't get until that person was on the phone with our sales team and that salesperson decided to create an account plan and document all of those signals there, likely on paper and with pen. So very much related to number 2, that third piece is it means that whoever has that best experience, that best digital experience, wins. And that best digital experience means it meant something to me as a prospect. That's going to be a big factor in building trust. You seem to understand what questions I had, Mr. Vendor, Mrs. Vendor. You asked them, you were there to answer them when I needed it in channels in which I searched for them. Your website was educational. You built trust with me. I have early brand preference. That's what that means to win that digital journey. And that's really difficult with the stacks that we have. I'm going to go back to 2014 for just a moment because I want to get into the heads of sales and marketers and customers during these times and again trace how we got here. Lead scoring, again, marketing automation era. Sales, we get bad leads. Marketers, you're not working the leads we give you. It's a classic conversation. If you get out of your seat in 2014 and you went to the ladies' room and you ran into a peer in sales. This is exactly what happened in sales. And the customer was very tolerant of the process, seemed to go along to get along, and said, yeah, eventually I'm going to give you my email because I'll need to get something behind to get on your site. And you will call me, and that is how it goes. 2018 or around, predictive analytics and ABM. Sales had a resistance initially to things like predictive lead scoring. I know better than the machine is something that I heard quite commonly. Marketing striving to really begin that alignment, to really start to say, we want to be accountable for pipeline, we want to be accountable for revenue, we don't want to be a bearer of load volume, we want to be engagement architects, let us in. And the customer is increasingly saying, we're totally going to figure this out by myself. I don't want a high pressure sales call really at any point. I've decided that I'm going to sort of self-navigate this, self-educate, digitally conduct my journey so that I don't have to be bothered with what was classically a fairly pushy sales process. 2024, here's what we're all saying. Sales is now saying, I need to understand the territory, right? Or swap territory for something else, some other way that sales tends to look at the world. But I'll use territory. I need to understand in this territory who's capable of an enterprise deal, who is showing signals that matter to me as a vendor. We'll dive into that a little bit as well, because there are thousands of signals and there's only a few that are going to matter to the very specific people to whom you sell. We're going to think about what that looks like through a very particular lens in a moment. Marketing is saying, hey, we're tracking intent and signals, and they are, but what they're not able to do, even now in 2024, is really organize those signals in a way that is queryable, right? We've moved on from queries. We're not just looking at a static field and saying, hey, give me everybody that has a company size of this volume, plus maybe a stacked signal of a recent download in the last 2 months. That's my list, let's go. It's not that. The signals don't live in the database, but we still need to have them to have a relevant conversation. So we're saying we're tracking it and we're doing our best to do so, but we don't really have the technology to do it. And customers are saying, just like I just said, again, 80%, 85%, who cares? The idea is, I don't want to speak to you. I don't want to speak to you until I have a brand preference, essentially. I don't want to speak to you unless you're so relevant for me that I literally can't turn you out. You're in a channel I respect that I'm sort of in anyway. And you've got a message for me that probably stacks a number of signals that, again, don't just exist, aren't just out there in the universe for me to, pluck as a B2B marketer, but that really means something to me, signals that actually mean something to me. So let's explore that a bit more. Here what we have is the questions that a modern marketing stack, which I'm patent pending, I'm just kidding, but really I made it up, the term insights and intent stack. This is really what we're looking to get at. Again, because we used to be a load bearer of leads. We're not anymore as B2B marketers or as revenue teams, as go-to-market teams, right? Even as that evolves. What we are is a source of truth and a source of experience design. So what that looks like is, what is our source of truth? It was the CRM. Is that where we're holding insights, even insights that expire? Is that where we're capturing signals? Do they live in fields? We know that they don't. Do they need to integrate with something? Is there some other source that has these insights of intent and signals that we can integrate? Is there any such source? The answer is it depends on the signal, of course. What do we need, right? Like, what is important to our prospects so that we can influence them as we've always done? That is classic and consistent since 2014, 2004, years before. How do we influence and persuade people to do what we want them to do? Hopefully, things that we think are good for them as well, things that they need to buy, to convert, to advocate, to use the product, right? Which is very important as we think about retention so much in 2024. How do we getting people to upsell, right? So all of the things that we have always needed people to do, they're asking for a far more personalized experience to do those things. And again, I want to just lean into this idea that we all are. This is how we buy. So, what is an intent versus signal? I think it's worth it to cover this piece. An intent is really an indicator of buying interest in your product or service. So if you intend to buy something, you are likely doing something like the following. You are likely downloading content, you're likely reading a topical article, attending a webinar, going to an event and picking certain sessions that are resonating with you and indicative of the kind of interests you have, visiting a vendor booth at a conference, subscribing to the company blog. Obviously, a high source of intent always was going to the pricing page versus going to the About Us page, which could be anything, or of course the careers page, which means you are not a prospect at all. So this list really should be, we could do a half an hour on it, we won't, but the list of intent is very long. These are some popular ones. And I want to juxtapose that for a moment with signals. These are events, largely, not necessarily events, but things that happen, things that occur, things that have been named that impact prospects in ways that favor your product or service, right? These are positive signals. We're not looking at negative signals here, but positive signals for you. So for instance, in a list of positive signals, why would I have layoffs? It doesn't sound very positive. But if you are a recruiting firm of some type and you place fractional individuals or you place contractors, you understand that a company that just conducted layoffs probably still has work to do, but doesn't want to pay full-timers to do it. Now, we can check about whether that's awesome or not, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, if that's what you sell, a layoff is a really, really important signal for you. An upcoming layoff is even better, knowing about that sooner than later. So these, again, are positive signals for your product or service, and they commonly look like job changes, right, for our prospects. That's something that's very interesting for you, maybe, depending on what you sell. Company funding, generally a positive sign that you've got someone on your target account list and they've acquired some capital. A merger and acquisition. Again, if you sell certain types of services or products, this could be huge for you. I worked at a consulting firm not long ago, and one of the things we specialized in was combining one or two or three or four CRMs that people had quite literally acquired along the way as they conducted merger activity. So merger and activity was a really important signal for us, and we led with that if we talked to a prospect. We covered layoffs. Folks are really transparent because they have to be if they're in public companies and they publish something like a 10K. They detail what risks they hold. They really have to. We trust that they're being relatively honest there. It is a very significant statement and document. There's gold in those 10Ks. If you sell the public companies, there's really a lot in there. There's a ton of signals. Technographic changes are big. Again, that same consulting company, if you wanted to switch from Marketo to HubSpot, I was all ears because my folks did that. That's what they did, and that's how we made our money. And then legislative updates. Again, this is a list that could and should be many hundreds of bullet points long if we were to cover the world. We can't cover the world. What we can say in this session is here are some good examples of signals that might matter, depending on what you're selling. I'm really bad at clicking slides, you guys should know. But when we think about intent versus signals, what is really important to know is that one element of intent isn't awesome. It's why that generally lives in a lead score that says, still, for most of us, is a proxy for intent, is a proxy for, we think a white paper is about 10 points. You'd have to do that about 5 times, plus demographic data that made sense for us to think that you are a warm call, for us to confidently send you over to sales, and for them to say, I had a call, they understood who our company was, they're familiar with us, they know we have a point of view, excellent. But any one of these things does not an intent make. The same on the signal side. The signals are for you to say, how does this inform a good conversation, a relevant conversation, a compelling conversation? How does this inform, how does this help me convince my buyer that they can trust me, that I understand their business a little bit, and that my solution is relevant to the very situation that they're in right now? So one of these is often not going to be enough for that, but stacking them and thinking about them as a family, thinking 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, 4 is better than 3, is the best way to apply it, but it's the hardest way to activate it as well, because that's exactly what our tech systems don't do. Again, if these were just 4 fields, they would do it. You could build that query. You might be afraid some of it was wrong, but you absolutely would come up with a list. Those signals on the right-hand side of your screen don't live in your database. They're not queryable. So there's ways that we have to find new ways to listen for. So what do we get from intent and signals when we combine them? Well, exactly what you expect. Actionable insights. So things that we can say, I have to think about this. This is not automated anywhere, but I understand that this is an important signal for my organization to leverage. I understand that it's an indicator of, um, of engaging with my company in a way that is positive. Personalized experiences. Again, we're looking for compelling, influential, trust building. We're looking for ways that make a conversation substantial and relevant, and not, hello, I saw you went to this event and I'd like to talk to you about my software. And finally, increased engagement. This is, at the end of the day, engagement about building brand preference for customers who are managing, again, their own buy cycles, their own buyer journeys, and are really in charge of who they talk to and when. This is going to look like an odd slide, but what I want to share with you now is my experience, why I say the signal matters according to what you're selling. Now, most of you on this call are B2B marketers. When I think about my prospects, I certainly don't care what color their eyes are. I don't care what retail stores they go in. But if you're Sephora, you care a lot. You care so much that you once sent me an email and you said, hey, Allison, we have a new virtual makeup try-on studio. Why don't you go ahead to the website, take a picture of yourself, and try on some eyeshadow. This is great for someone like me. I'm exactly the target market. I'm vulnerable to those messages, essentially. And so I did it. And what I did was I gave my attributes to Sephora. And Sephora absolutely weaponized them. Their emails to me became, hey, for someone with fair skin and brown eyes, here's what you want to do. Here's your look for Christmas. Here's your look for Valentine's Day. It was very impressive, and they really used the data that, by the way, is important to me as a consumer in this way. So, signal, I have brown eyes. There's no intent there. It's just a way for them to have a relevant conversation with me. Then I walk into a store, and do you know what they ask me? They ask me about the special occasion I might be shopping for. The first thing they asked me was, can I help you? And of course I said, I'm just looking. But the moment I picked up a product, these individuals have been trained to say, is there an occasion? Now, on the one hand, they don't care if there's an occasion. I'm not saying people who work at Sephora are careless. I'm just saying this is a function of training, because if you can get me talking about that, I'm going to help you understand exactly how to influence me. I have a wedding. I'm in a wedding in June. This is not biographical. None of this is true. I have brown eyes. That's where it ends. And I'm wearing a green dress. Someone now is able to really give me a customized solution, whether it's customized or not, right? A good salesperson on that floor, a good artist on that floor who may exist, is absolutely able and now has all the information that they need, because it was relevant and organic for me to share it, to have a conversation with me that's very, very rich and likely get me to take my credit card out of my purse. So in a way that we can all relate to, it's similar with B2B, but the signals are different. Again, they're different for everyone. But here are some common ones. If I was a customer of yours, and let's just say it was that same learning system, and I was in there all the time, a very active user, I go to LinkedIn and I say, I'm not there anymore. I'm at this company B. And I might say, if I'm that company trying to sell to me, I want to be listening for that signal. I really want to know when active users move on. Maybe I can sell to their new company. Maybe I can still get them to be an advocate. At least I can get an introduction in the new firm, right? So that matters. It also matters to me as the prospect. I changed jobs. It's an enormous life decision. I have new health insurance. It's a whole thing. So it's relevant for me. It's a relevant conversation to reach out to me and say, saw you moved, congratulations. It's organic to say, I know you used our product a lot. Do you have a solution at company B? Or I might publish an article on LinkedIn that I'm somewhat passionate about, right? I might say B2B marketing operations is dead or something. I wouldn't write that, but something that is meaningful to me, and again, really helps those folks understand a signal, understand something I'm interested in, and craft a relevant conversation about it. And then maybe my company got additional funding. So here I am, I'm at a new company, I've shared a topic that is of interest to me, and I might have some money to spend. So all of this becomes a signal, again, depending on what you're selling, that makes you have a better relevant conversation with me, but I don't have a place to put it in the stack. And that's what's scary right now. So I don't have and I'm so sorry if this disappoints you, and maybe this session led you to expect sort of a picture of a MarTech stack with vendors and where they live. I don't have that. I am very much working on building that. What I do know is I need integrations and real-time insights. It is well beyond the time that as a B2B marketer, I should worry about whether my information is accurate and correct and current. So there's that. I need to understand that it's no longer satisfactory for my salesperson, my peer in sales, or my peers in marketing to say, I really just want to work out of this one thing. If you can get that predictive analytics system to talk to the CRM, great, but I'm not going to walk around and be in 6 systems all day. People still feel like that. So we need some integrations. We need next best actions, right? We need an automated way to say, if this signal exists, we need a way to activate it, even if it's just letting someone know that this signal exists. So again, I'm going to go back to an example. Let's just go back to a marketing automation system. Say you're in the market for marketing automation. An important signal is that you have went to RFP. You've built a request for proposal from 3 marketing automation systems. Maybe you have a mechanism for learning that. Maybe your sales folks are out there with their ears to the ground. They've got contacts, maybe. But either way, that's a really important signal for you. It might be a signal to you if I wrote 3 reasons I hate my existing marketing automation system on LinkedIn. Signals that matter to me and to you. If I write a LinkedIn post that says, I can't believe I don't have the day after Thanksgiving off, it doesn't matter. It might be something to bond with me about, but it's absolutely not relevant and holds no value for you. So we got to be on the lookout for things that do. What this slide should say, it's a little bumpy right now, is automated workflows. What I propose for folks who are building these systems is for some automated notifications to say, as a company, we have, as a go-to-marketing team, built a list of 12 critical signals for our organization. Again, I'm going to go back now to the example of a company that sells fractional professionals or contractors, that places those individuals into companies for a certain amount of time. They come and they go, and the person makes good money as a contractor, and the company benefits from that. That important signal could be layoffs, or it could be that job openings on their website increases by something like 25%. The point is, this is all very, very important for you to determine. And my ask of an intent and insight stack is, tell me when 3 of those things happen. When 3 of those things happen, if you can notify me, I will be ready to activate that, or we'll build something to activate it automatically. So as we wrap up, my ask is to conduct this exercise. Exercise is really simple on this sheet of paper, but activate your go-to-market team and determine, before the tech allows you to do anything with it, be ahead of the tech. Don't get caught flat-footed like we did in 2014, 2016, when we said, we've got intent data, let's just put them in the same campaigns we ran before. Figure out what your top signals are, even if you can only apply them to your top 25 prospect accounts. But do the work of saying, if you could know anything about our prospects, what is the thing that you could craft a conversation around? What is the thing that you would lead with in a booth conversation if you could? What do you want to know? And then we'll worry about how to capture it, and we'll worry about how to activate it. I can see we're at 3:30, and I know I talked a little quickly, but I've been Allison Snow. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and I truly hope you got some value out of my session.